The good news of Jesus Christ according to the Gospel of St. Luke in the 14th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, they were watching him closely. When he noticed how the guests chose the places of honor, he told them a parable. When you are invited by someone to a wedding banquet, do not sit down at the place of honor in case someone more distinguished than you has been invited by the host. And the host who invited both of you may come and say to you, give this person your place. And then, in disgrace, you would start to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit down at the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For all who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. He said to the one who had invited him, when you give a luncheon or dinner, do not invite your friends or brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors in case they may invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you. For you will be repaid at the resurrection of the righteous. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. Please be seated. If I were Jesus, I've always wanted to start a sermon that way. If I were Jesus, and I'm in no risk of being confused about that, everyday sin keeps my feet on the ground, keeps me humbled. I know I'm not Jesus, but we do get confused sometimes about that. I think that's how sin seems to happen. We displace Jesus and ourselves, exchange places. Take God from being first and put ourselves there. That's how temptation and sin become so easy to do when we try to work it all, control it all. Right? I think that's what's going on in this gospel text for today. People are taking places that might not be their own. They're seeking these spots of honor, and I think, even though this text is so far away, so long ago, it's not so different necessarily than today. We live in a competitive world, don't we? Looking out for number one, ourselves, our interests, in our personal lives, community, and the life of the world. Jesus is describing something pretty different here, though. He's describing the kingdom, really. This first shall be last, the last shall be first. It's that sort of theology that in God's kingdom, in God's reign, it's about the poor, the lame, the crippled, those who are in need. Those are the highest in the kingdom, and that kingdom is right side up. It's this world that we struggle in that is upside down in the vision and in the world of this gospel and this parable. It's a calling to turn things around. Now, if I were Jesus, I think I'd tell this parable a little differently for today, because in the 2,000 years since this happened, we've started to put name settings at tables, right? So we know just where to sit. A little social engineering is taking care of this awkward situation. If I were to tell this parable today, I think I would use the setting of traffic. We all got here this morning and can identify with it. In traffic, there's a lot of jockeying on happening, isn't there? People trying to get there in a hurry. I don't know if they're running late or if they're just so important that they need to be there before the rest of us. We see it all the time, and it makes me pretty nervous, wondering what kind of accidents or carnage might happen in the wake of this stunt driver here trying to get there first. Sometimes it's me. I've taken to this habit lately, trying to be more attentive to those other drivers around me, especially those with their blinkers on or starting to edge over into my lane, looking for opportunities to let them in. We've all been let in before, right? Let into traffic. Another person sees you, makes eye contact with you, maybe gives a little hand signal. I like to nod and go like this. And even though our lives may have never crossed paths before, may never again, at least we got that little moment, and in that moment, we can grace them in. That's a great feeling when people have let me in. You felt it too, I know. Because there's a moment of humanity there, isn't it? It's not just another vehicle and some other poor sap trying to make their way through, but there's somebody who gets seen, who is let in ahead. In doing that, I never feel like I'm somehow diminished or now I'm in second place and I'm falling behind in the rat race that I'm involved in here. But rather, I feel better, bigger. I feel like in that little gesture, there's an awful lot of hope for us. As we think about the world and all of our struggles, small and big, race, environment, politics, if only we let each other in. If only we stepped back and took a little lower place, actually a higher place in the kingdom, but it looks lower in this world. If only we did that, I think there'd be so much more hope. In fact, I think if we don't do it, as a human race, I don't know if we're going to make it. I know that in the church and in church life, there's changes going on, and you've heard me speak of this before. Maybe you've read about it or thought about it as well, where things are not the same as they used to be. We can't assume that people will be coming out and looking for us on Sunday morning. Some still do. We do get guests and newcomers, and thank God for that. But more and more in this day and age, it's on us in this post-Christian era to let people in by inviting them in, by letting them know that we're open, that we're here, that we are here for them, and that we care for them because God cares for them. Let them in. The scary church word for it is evangelism. But the ELCA uses a discipleship word for it, inviting. Inviting. Just recently here we had a funeral. It was not for one of our own members, but neighbors of one of our members, dear members. And so we opened up. We let them in. It was a funeral for a person who was not overtly Christian. Came out of a context overseas where religions weren't really a thing. But in the end, They were looking for a place in their grief and following this beautiful life, a place to grieve, a place to celebrate that life. Reached out to us here. There's a lot of congregations that might not entertain hosting a funeral that's not for a member. And to be a member, you've got to be baptized. You've got to be active in the church. You've got to confess the faith. These things were not there, but I really felt like it's incumbent on us to do what I preach, to do what we believe in, to be open, and as the ELCA is, to let people in. And so we held this service here. And I don't know if we've had a larger gathering of atheists, agnostics, of Muslims, of Jews, and even a few Christians here, as we celebrated a life that God gave and that God so blessed. And He gave me opportunity here as a Christian to welcome brothers and sisters, siblings of all kinds of different faiths and philosophies, to represent what we are as people of grace, and have an opportunity to share from our own faith tradition, Jesus Christ, who lived, who died, who rose again for us all. Yeah, there was an evangelism moment, an opportunity to share the faith, to share the grace that we believe in, to let them in without judgment, with the kind of grace that I think Jesus showed us all on the cross. A great opportunity. And I think many, many more to come. This fall we'll be kicking off a series of the Abrahamic faiths, learning more about other traditions, Judaism, Islam too. It's not something for us to be afraid of, but something for us to learn more about, so that we are informed, that we can respect, that we can work with people of other faiths for a better future for the whole world, for our children. And I would argue for Christ's sake. He who died for all. At least we can learn and engage and get along and try to do better. Next Sunday, we've got a great opportunity. It's God's Work, Our Hands Sunday. And we're throwing a dinner party, like in this gospel for today. We'll be worshiping. We'll be hearing Revelation give a concert. We'll be interacting with our neighbors just right across the street. And there's all kinds of them there. And I really hope that they show up so that they get a sense of us being here and here for them. And that we're the kind of Christians that are all right. Not a problem, but a part of the solution. We have this opportunity to welcome them in and give them seats of honor among us. Not because of where they come from or what they believe or any of that, but because of where we come from and what we believe. Maybe we'll make some connections. Maybe some members will come out of it. You never know what the Holy Spirit does in ministry. I'll tell you what the widow said from the funeral that we had here recently. She asked me if she might become a member. We'll see. She expressed an appreciation for all that we did, and after the service, when I expressed my condolences again and gave her a hug, she asked me to do her funeral. I said, no time soon, okay? Though Tuesday's open. That's bad. Forgive me. If I were Jesus, we'd be in a lot of trouble. But sometimes these kind of things happen. It was not my goal necessarily, just us doing good ministry, being people of grace, reaching out. With this God's Work, our Hand Sunday event last week, I got to tell you, some of our office people are kind of nervous because there's a lot of work going into it, and we have sign-ups for a number of things, and we need a lot of folks to sign up. If there's one concrete thing you can do to live in and live out that gospel, check out that sign-up that's in your bulletin. Bring a dish. Bring yourself. Share in the grace that God gives us to share. And what a joy it is. I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to our neighbors coming. I'm looking forward to sharing that time with you. And I'm looking forward to seeing what God does. Amen.